Let's bring in retired four-star U.S. Navy Admiral William H. McRaven. He spent nearly 4 decades as a Navy SEAL, commanded at every level, and oversaw the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. He's also a best-selling author with a new book out today titled Duty, Honor, Country, and Life, a Tribute to the American Spirit. There's a "Are we going to be okay?" sense to this book that we appreciate very much, and we'll talk about in just a moment. But first, what is your takeaway about these peace talks that are ongoing with the war? It feels like you might be concerned, I won't put words in your mouth, about what the overall mission is.
Yeah, you know, when you think about it, every president since 1979 has been trying to change the regime in Iran. And you can understand the allure of that. The fact of the matter is the Iranians have killed, tens of thousands of their own people and hundreds or thousands of our U.S. soldiers. So you understand the need to try to change the regime in Iran. But I teach a class at the University of Texas, the LBJ School, on national security decision-making. And one of the things I tell the students is, if you're going to, take some actions and make some decisions, are you going to be at a better strategic point after you take these actions? So I think we're at this place right now where we say, are we in a better strategic position now than we were prior to February 28th? So prior to February 28th, the straits were open. Prior to February 28th, we had a regime in power, yes, but I think the Israelis would tell you the current regime is even a more hardline regime.
Right.
The Iranians still have 940 pounds of highly enriched uranium. So are we in a better position? Now, we have taken out their Navy. We have taken out their Air Force. We have certainly degraded their nuclear capability. But I think the real debate now is, are we better off now than we were prior to February 28th?
And I think that's the frustration of many military experts, foreign policy experts, perhaps some people even around President Trump and the American public, which is a lot of this was foreseeable, that killing a couple of guys at the top of the Supreme Leader and some of his top aides wasn't going to lead to regime change, which the president said we could have learned that from history, right? That you can't take out one guy and expect Jeffersonian democracy to flow from there. And also that the Straits of Hormuz would be used as a leverage point by the Iranians, at the very least mining it and now taking this next step of shutting it down completely. So from where you're sitting, before the war started, would some of these things have been foreseeable?
Yeah, absolutely. You never, ever, ever talk about Iran without talking about the Straits of Hormuz. So I have no doubt that the military advisors to the president said exactly what you pointed out. They said, look, regime change is probably not going to occur. You can take out the Supreme Leader, but the apparatus that is this theocracy runs deep. The fact of the matter is they are going to try to mine the Straits of Hormuz. They will use that as leverage. So, yes, all of this, I think, was understandable. Now, again, I can't take away the allure of trying to change the dynamics and what's happening in Iran. I understand why the president felt kind of compelled to do this. But history has shown that this is very, very challenging. And again, you've got to give the U.S. military, incredible credit for the magnificent job they did. And you have to mourn the loss of the great soldiers that we've lost in this fight.
So, Admiral, let's take a look at where we are now in this situation. Let's say talks break down the next couple of days, and President Trump wants to resume military operations. Walk us through the challenges that were presented, or first, trying to actually clear and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And then second, if he does authorize some sort of, it would be limited, but some sort of small ground invasion, whether that's Karg Island or just seize the nuclear materials.
Well, again, what are your strategic objectives in this? So the strategic objectives at this point should be now to kind of get the Straits of Hormuz open, which is going to be challenging because the Iranians still have thousands and thousands of drones. They probably have thousands of short-range ballistic missiles. So if we put ships in there to clear the mines and they want to stop us, they'll put us in a very difficult position. Can we do it? Yes. Is it risky? Absolutely. So at this point in time, the best I think we can hope for is to broker some sort of agreement, some sort of arrangement with the Iranians that says, okay, we'll figure out how to lift the sanctions. We'll promise that we're not going to attack anymore. You've got to open the straits, and then try to do something to reduce their capability to continue to enrich the uranium to a point where they can produce a nuclear weapon. And this is what the negotiations are all about.
Yeah, you've brought up a lot of good questions that one would want to ask yourself as president and within the administration, including what are what are our strategic objectives in this endeavor? So what are they? Do you know? Has that been communicated in an effective way? Who in the administration do you think, the best for the president to lean on for advice and insight and context? And then what about our allies?
Well, I think this is one of the problems with the current process within the administration is normally when the president is about to make major decisions, there is an interagency process where you bring together the State Department and the Department of Defense, and you bring together all the regional experts that can talk about Iran and explain to the deputies and the principals and the National Security Council, what the risks are in doing these sort of things. But my understanding is in this administration that that circle is a lot tighter, and therefore the president is listening to, again, his close advisors, and whether that is the vice president or Marco Rubio. But I'm not sure they have the depth of understanding on some of these issues that a Richard Haas would have, who was just on, and frankly, some incredible people at the State Department and other places that really have an understanding of what's going on in Iran.
Given where we are right now, Admiral, what would be a good outcome for the United States? Forget when we started, but here we are. What looks like a good outcome?
Well, what looks like a good outcome is the Iranians opening the straits, that we find some way to reduce their capability of enriching what is already the highly enriched uranium. We don't want them to get a bomb. Again, I understand that. I agree with the president on that. Frankly, I think the strikes back in July or for Midnight Hammer were appropriate. But now I think that's probably the best we can hope for. Open the straits and some guarantees that they're not going to move towards getting a nuclear weapon. Doesn't
sound like a lot of gains from where we started back then. Let's move to the book, Admiral, Duty, Honor, Country, and Life, a tribute to the American spirit. You always, in your books, kind of lift us out of the morass of the daily politics and remind us about some of the things that make this country so great. And they're everywhere you look still in this country, despite some of the headlines we read every day. So I want to go through some of the speeches that you highlight here. But big picture, why did you sit down to write this? Yeah,
because of what you just raised. The fact of the matter is, I think there is a lot of concern about where we are in the country. And I hope as people read this book, that they'll come away and recognize that, look, we may be going through some tough times, but there are great, great Americans out there that have this American spirit, this idea that we can get anything done. We can send men and women around the moon today. We can put them on the moon. We can cure cancer. But also the book is a little bit of my thoughts on democracy at 250 years. So, where is our democracy now, and what do we need to do to continue to keep our democracy moving in the right direction? The good news is, I hope people will be inspired and uplifted by this book. But there is a couple of cautionary notes in there about, what we need to do to continue to move America in the right direction.
One of the speeches you highlight in your book is a 2020 commencement address delivered virtually to students at MIT during the pandemic.
Right.
Let's listen to part of that message.
As I grew up and traveled the world, and as I saw more than my share of war and destruction, I came to the hard truth that Captain America isn't coming to the rescue. There is no Superman, no Batman, no Wonder Woman, no Black Widow, no Avengers, no Justice League, no Gandalf, no Harry Potter, and no Aquaman. If we are going to save the world from pandemics, war, climate change, poverty, racism, extremism, intolerance, then you, the brilliant minds of MIT, you are going to have to save the world. It will be up to you. But never, never in my life have I been so confident that the fate of the world is in good hands. Go forth and be the heroes we need you to be.
Oh, that's wonderful. And how important is that message today as we move toward an uncertain future, looking at this war, but also ahead of the midterms?
Yeah, well, again, this was a commencement address for the students at MIT. But I would tell you, I think, again, when people start complaining about what's happening in Washington, and I'm talking to a large crowd, I say, well, let me tell you where the problem is. It's with us. This is a democracy. We have an opportunity to change it. We can vote the people in. We can vote the people out. And if we want to have a change, let's make that change occur. Yeah, absolutely. And we can all go out there. And again, as I told the young students, be these heroes. Be courageous. Be humble. Be men and women of integrity. Have compassion. Follow the rule of law. These are important things for our democracy. And take the time to speak up when you need to.
I'm curious watching that speech. I was thinking about where we were in that moment.
Yeah.
In the middle of a pandemic,
Right.
protests in the streets during the Black Lives Matter movement after George Floyd was murdered. It felt chaotic. It felt uncertain. We didn't know if there was what was going to happen tomorrow. So I'm curious even today, because people ask us all the time, are we going to be okay? What's going on? How do you maintain, not in some Pollyannish way, but how do you keep your optimism about America?
Because I spend time with the youth of America. As I said, I teach a graduate class at the LBJ School at the University of Texas. I travel all over the country. I travel all over the world. And when I meet these young men and women, and older men and women, I see that they continue to have the American spirit. They continue to believe in the values that we all think are important. This idea of, again, liberty and justice and equality and things that have made us a great country. And so, as bad as things may seem, we're going to be okay. We just have some work to do.
Amen. I agree with that. So another speech featured in your book, the 2014 commencement address to students at the University of Texas at Austin, a speech that went viral for this piece of advice.
If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. So if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed.
Get a win to start the day, right? I've joked with you before, and I said again, this is a great tool to use on teenagers. You say, Admiral McRaven says you need to make your bed. Forget what I say. Were you shocked at what that became? It became a book by the same name, and it's still, people still talk about it and use an example with kids.
Yeah, of course I was surprised. I mean, I was flattered to have the opportunity to give the commencement address to my alma mater, but yeah, I think it's got over 150 million views on YouTube. And but I tell you, if you like to make your bed, you're going to love Duty, Honor, Country, and Life.
Parents across America are very grateful.
So, Admiral, give us another. You still have a remarkable optimism about the nation right now, and there are many people in this country who feel less so about the moment. What would be your message to them if you told them, like, okay, here's why you should still believe? What are a couple of things?
Yeah, you know, I think that again the important values that we really hold dear. And again, I talk about them in the book, but it is this idea of equality. It is this idea of justice. It is this idea of compassion. I talk about we need to be the good guys. You know, we have historically been the good guys, and it's not Pollyannish. I mean, you take a look at what we did after World War II. We rebuilt Europe. We had the Marshall Plan, the Berlin Airlift. Every time there is a tsunami, a typhoon, a hurricane, it was always America that kind of came in first to help out. And this idea that we are the good guys kind of permeates every place I go in the United States. My concern is we're getting away from being the good guys, and we have to be very, very careful about that. But nonetheless, when I travel around the country, and frankly, I just came back from Europe, I had a chance to spend time with some of my NATO colleagues. They still look to us to be the good guys. And I think that is baked into our DNA from the time the founding fathers, started this place 250 years ago. So, and I don't think no matter what happens in Washington, I don't think that's going to go away. We just have to resurrect it a little bit right now.
The new book titled Duty, Honor, Country, and Life, a tribute to the American spirit, is on sale today. Retired U.S. Navy 4-star Admiral William H. McRaven, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's always great to have you.
Thanks, Admiral.
And from